The killer phrase was at the end when Kimmel said, "You just don't realize it." Because you see, he's smarter than you, and he needs you to know that. And his ego can't bear that there's someone out there more famous and more influential than him. I got news for you, Kimmel. The last time you mattered, Bruce Jenner still had a...
Jimmy Kimmel thought he was just cracking jokes until Greg Gutfeld and Tucker Carlson turned his punchlines into a public therapy session. Gutfeld brought razor-sharp sass. Carlson landed intellectual body slams. And Jimmy was left holding nothing but the cold sting of instant regret.
Jimmy Kimmel lived with him. Like, Jimmy Kimmel is a talented guy, and I don't think he's like an evil person or something, but he's made this deal where he just serves power and attacks anybody who challenges power. Like, how can... Honestly, how can he look in the mirror and say, I'm doing something honorable? Like, how can he live with himself? How can his wife sleep with him?
Well, it'd be...
I mean...
What started as casual late-night banter quickly escalated into Kimmel questioning if witness protection was still an option. This wasn't just a clapback. It was a full-blown comedic takedown. How brutal was it? Even his laugh track bailed, going dead silent as the wreckage of the jokes settled around him.
Late night host Jimmy Kimmel is back on the air after taking the summer off. He's missed a lot. Kimmel says if you're not vaccinated, you shouldn't get a hospital ICU bed. But I'm not sure if Jimmy was being sincere because he wasn't crying. Anyway, it's just funny hearing someone say, "I see you," who nobody actually sees. Look, I don't want to suggest that Kimmel's show has become boring and predictable, but last night during the taping, people in the studio audience were changing the channel.
Jimmy Kimmel strutted onto stage like the undisputed heavyweight champ of late-night comedy, totally unaware that two very different beasts, Greg Gutfeld and Tucker Carlson, were waiting, claws sharpened with predator precision. This wasn't a roast or even a fair fight. It was more like watching a clueless houseplant fed into a chipper, slow, oddly satisfying, and so brutally one-sided it left the audience in stunned amusement.
A comedian and to do that, but his job is to be he's supposed to be funny, and comedians are supposed to hold people in positions of power accountable.
Suck up
Yeah,
to the people in charge.
Exactly.
He's their Praetorian guard.
Yeah,
and it's like the self-hatred he must feel because he wasn't always. That's my point. Yeah. I mean, Colbert has always been a hard partisan, talented guy, but obviously he's not a comedian. But Kimmel was a comedian. Like, how does he? I don't understand.
I don't know
how he can sleep.
He might buy into the narrative to the extent that he thinks it's morally wrong to joke about these certain topics.
But it's not just that. He's like pouring hot oil on the peasants from the parapet. Right. Like he's hurting anyone who challenges the king.
Kimmel, ever the self-appointed moral hall monitor of Hollywood, took another swing at Fox News, tossing out his usual smug backhanders like a guy convinced sarcasm should be an Olympic sport. He leaned hard into his late-night dad persona, lecturing politics with a raised eyebrow and all the energy of a substitute teacher trapped during finals week. But this time his class included Greg Gutfeld, a man who eats smugness for breakfast and roasts egos like marshmallows over an open flame.
If you are open up to being wrong, you're more than likely going to end up right once in a while. But these guys have been wrong for 8 years. They've been wrong for 8 years because they can't let go of their egos. It's true in the media. It's actually, it's true among the never Trumper Republicans. If you look at the sourpusses, it's an internal emotional feeling that why him, Trump, and not me? Whether it's like, I don't know, Bill Kristol or Jonah Goldberg. It's like, these are guys that were generally normal. And then their egos just kind of like, they just took it hard. And you got to let go, guys.
Gutfeld didn't just respond. He ignited. The man practically lit a cigarette after the burn, not out of habit, but because the moment begged for drama. No props, no applause signs, no elite Harvard writers. Just Kimmel's bloated ego served on a silver platter. With one look at Jimmy's comedy by committee routine, Gutfeld served a 5-course feast of mockery, each line landing harder than the uncomfortable truth that people actually watched the man show. It was a rebuttal. It was a one-man demolition job.
It was my belief that these were humorless scolds who just didn't think our jokes were funny, and they thought they were offensive, and they were being hypersensitive, and that's not the case.
No, it's not. You're going through the stages of realization.
The stages of realization. I eventually learned and came to realize that it's not humor. Humor is a vehicle for truth delivery. They don't like the fact that the narrative is being challenged in a way that's effective, and so they have to shut you up. And so that's what it's about. It has nothing to do with them being
Wait, they don't have
humorless.
women.
While Kimmel basked in the glow of his own applause, Greg Gutfeld was operating on a completely different level, pulling receipts, cranking up the data, and landing razor-sharp jabs at how Jimmy's show now survives on nothing but virtue signaling in YouTube clips titled Kimmel Destroys Democracy, Deniers Again. Gutfeld, the mastermind who turned a shoestring budget and lightning-fast one-liners into late night's highest-rated show, delivered a takedown so precise it deserved a Surgeon General's warning. And the best part? He didn't even raise his voice. His performance wasn't loud or aggressive. It was surgical, cool, calculated, like a cat knocking a wine glass off the table, not out of malice. But because it could, Jimmy was a glass, Greg was a cat, and the internet, it devoured the wreckage like spilled Chardonnay at a party. Just when it looked like Kimmel might stumble away, clinging to the last shreds of his pride, in glided Tucker Carlson, cool, composed, and unbothered, like a Bond villain who's just learned the world is running out of martinis. Unlike Gutfeld's brand of chaos, Tucker doesn't go for laughs. He goes for the slow-burn intellectual evisceration, with a smug head tilt and a tone that screamed, "I've read 5 more books than you, and I'm about to prove it." Tucker approached the Kimmel saga like a thesis titled The Tragedy of the Once Funny Comedian, a case study in relevance lost. No jokes, just layered scorn wrapped in academic insight. Gutfeld lit the fuse. Carlson laid the gas line, and together, they watched from above as Kimmel's narrative went sky-high, engulfed in flames and forgotten applause.
Oh, I have a few names to add. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, the town crier. All outlets ignoring Biden's revolving door of gaps. His constant forgetfulness, weird rambling speeches being let off stage. All the while you told us there's nothing to see here. Meanwhile, any parent can see this face means you got to change a diaper.
Tucker Carlson dismantled Jimmy Kimmel's evolution or regression, depending on your tolerance for hypocrisy, with the precision of a forensic accountant. Kimmel, once the fearless clown who took aim at everyone equally, was now, in Tucker's telling, a hollow echo of his former self, draped in self-righteousness and drifting through applause lines like comedian moonlighting as a senator. Tucker's critique didn't target the jokes themselves, but the need for them, the way Kimmel's comedy had become a safe space for people who only want to laugh at those they already despise. Not in a funny, subversive way, but in that sanctimonious, eye-roll-inducing, coffee shop liberal kind of way. He held up a mirror, and what stared back wasn't Jon Stewart. It was a knockoff morality guru pacing a Whole Foods parking lot. While Greg Gutfeld high-fived the camera with punchlines sharp enough to carve marble, Tucker composed a slow, quiet symphony of disdain. He didn't label Kimmel a failed comedian. He cast him as a fallen figure, a cautionary tale. From rebel to sermonizer, from edgy to echo chamber, a fall from grace not marked by scandal or outrage, but by something more haunting, a long, painful whimper into cultural irrelevance. And Tucker didn't shout it. He simply made you see it.
Even the quote comedians, they were on propaganda duty too. Watch this.
He's also pushing U.S. intelligence to find evidence for this theory that the virus was accidentally released from a lab in Wuhan. That's his new angle to feed the wingnuts, to treat this virus like it was a conspiracy of some kind.
It should have never happened. This plague should never have happened. It could have been stopped. But people chose not to stop it.
What people? Tomorrow he'll blame the Spanish flu on Antonio Banderas.
Yeah.
What made the sting even worse were the numbers, real, undeniable numbers. Gutfeld's show wasn't just edging out Kimmel. It was bulldozing in the ratings, like a semi-truck plowing through a gluten-free bakery. Once the top dog in a time slot packed with late-night legends, Jimmy now found himself fading fast in Gutfeld's rear-view mirror, waving helplessly with nothing but laughter and moral monologues to keep him afloat. Social media, of course, exploded. Memes rolled in faster than Kimmel's Nielsen numbers could drop. Side-by-side images showed Gutfeld as a late-night barbarian wielding a flaming microphone, and Tucker as a stoic, sneering librarian slamming the book shut on Jimmy's relevance. The internet crowned them the unlikeliest tag team champions in the arena of cultural humiliation. This wasn't just a battle of jokes. It was evolution versus stagnation. Despite being labeled Fox News court jester, Gutfeld understood one vital truth. Comedy should sting, should make people uncomfortable, not feel like a TED Talk that forgot to be funny. Tucker, never chasing laughs, wielded intellect like a blade. His smirk cut deeper than any punchline. Meanwhile, Kimmel stood frozen, reciting jokes like sacred texts, eyes wide with forced outrage and a grin that screamed, "Please clap." He hadn't realized the game had changed, and his opponents were sharper, faster, and devastatingly self-aware.
So these fellows are experiencing deep mental pain. And it's not just them. Journalists are now offering tips to deal with their disappointment, frustration, even fear. And I get it. That's normal after any loss. I'm still mad about losing world's funniest man to Johnny Depp. But why would people feel fear? Maybe because their only news sources are constantly telling them Trump's going to turn America into Nazi Germany. But you know who felt actual fear during the Biden administration? People who had to ride the subway or have to buy groceries.
And perhaps the most delicious irony of all, the very people Jimmy spent years mocking, the ones he claimed don't get comedy, were now the ones setting its pace. Gutfeld's show, running on a shoestring budget and dressed like a rejected sitcom, felt more rebellious and alive than anything Kimmel had produced in years. Meanwhile, Tucker, without a flashy set or network machine, was turning heads with sharp monologues filmed from rustic cabins. Something Jimmy, for all his resources, never managed.
Dana, I'll start with you. It was a terrible night for women. Trump won more women. He won the popular vote. What are these people moaning about?
I don't know. I mean, today, Brian Stelter tweeted that there was a talent agent who told him that a lot of members of the media are questioning whether they have it in them to cover another Trump cycle. And then they wonder why the working class is like, guys, you are so out of touch with what real work is. And also, they didn't really cover the Biden administration. They didn't cover the border. They didn't cover inflation.
Gutfeld treated Kimmel like a target-rich environment. Tucker treated him like an expired coupon. Together, they didn't just roast him. They turned him into a cautionary tale. Late-night TV, one the playground of belly laughs, goofy skits, and surprise musical guests, now feels more like C-SPAN with a laugh track. The shift has been seismic. Comedy's new dress code is political armor, and no one wears it heavier than Jimmy Kimmel. Once the guy hoisting beer bongs on a man show, Kimmel now opens monologues like he's testifying before Congress. His punchlines resemble political theses, drenched in dramatic pauses, solemn tones, and enough smug energy to power a Prius. He's not cracking jokes anymore. He's staging interventions no one asked for. Kimmel had become the most impassioned liberal arts professor on television. Wielding a comedy degree, he likely burned somewhere around the Trump era. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld is on Fox, tossing word grenades and gleefully dancing on the ashes of traditional late night, like it owes him money. Gutfeld isn't just part of conversation. He's a rebellion personified. The guy who kicked down the nightclub door, strolled past a velvet rope, and laughed. "You call this edgy? I've got dad jokes that sting harder." In a world of scripted outrage, he brought back something rare. Unscripted chaos that actually hits.
There are a lot of people who are like on your side because they're for free speech, who are not actually for free speech at all, who are pushing, a very specific foreign policy agenda, for example, and using another issue to lower your defenses and let themselves into your brain. And I think that's really sinister, really, really, really sinister. And it's becoming more obvious now. Like, if you're for free speech, then you're just for free speech because you support the principle.
While Kimmel monologues like he's angling for a Senate seat, Gutfeld barrels through segments with the subtlety of a marching band in a library, and America is tuning in. While other hosts are still asking, what does this mean for our democracy? Gutfeld's busy handing out fart jokes and jabs at the OC. Enjoy the ride. Then there's Tucker Carlson, the sarcastic academic with a smirk so condescending it could curdle milk. He's not officially part of the late-night crew, but he might as well be their final boss. Tucker's power isn't in stand-up, it's in stand-down. He doesn't roast, he dissects. He sizes up Kimmel and Gutfeld like a disappointed headmaster, wondering how these two clowns snuck into his prestigious boarding school. Just when you think he's above the chaos, Tucker drops a line like, "Kimmel's a cautionary tale about letting your writers do all your thinking." Boom! Grenade wrapped in a monologue. This isn't just a feud. It's a full-on culture clash. Late-night TV is tearing at the seams, and the battleground isn't comedy. It's identity. Kimmel stands for the sanctified woke comic, trying to save the world one eye roll at a time. Gutfeld is a jester, flipping double birds of the establishment with sharp tongue and Nielsen numbers to back it up. And Tucker? He's a guy in the corner, sipping brandy and watching it all burn, narrating the downfall like it's a Ken Burns documentary.
Job description of a comedian is not so different from the job description of a journalist, as traditionally constituted. Tell the truth about the powerful. Comedians are usually a lot smarter, more clever, and incisive than journalists, but that's what they're supposed to be doing. Almost none still do. Adam Carolla is one of the very few remaining comedians in the United States. He's out with a new book called Everything Reminds Me of Something.
Naturally, Kimmel couldn't just sit back and take it. No, he climbed up his TV pulpit and fired back. The problem? His monologues sounded like a sad remix of his greatest hits. Jabs at Fox News, check. Mocking Tucker's bow tie from a decade ago, check. A rant about misinformation, oh boy, triple check. But the zingers didn't zing. They just thudded. It was like watching a band play their greatest hits at half speed while the audience scrolled through their phones. Viewers noticed it immediately. The spark was gone. The fire he once brought had faded into a dull echo. And the ratings? Let's just say they landed lower than a Maroon 5 halftime show. For a guy who once ruled late night, Kimmel's comeback swung somewhere between a whiff and a gentle breeze. Maybe the problem isn't the jokes. It's that the crowd's already moved on. Late night has changed. Punchlines have morphed into policy statements, and applause breaks are just virtue signals in disguise. In this battle of laughs versus lectures, Gutfeld and Tucker are reminding everyone that, just maybe, people want to laugh before they cry. Compare that to Gutfeld, who hurls lines like grenades, barely pausing to watch the explosion before jumping to the next absurdity. Or Tucker, who's barely raised eyebrow land harder than an entire week's worth of Kimmel monologues. It's no contest. The lesson? If you're going to wage war in a land of sarcasm and satire, bring more than recycled outrage and limp punchlines. Bring teeth. Bring wit. Bring something beyond a smug grin and the same 5 political talking points you swipe from Reddit. Because when Gutfeld fires up the sarcasm cannon and Tucker strolls in with his philosophical shiv, you better hope you've packed more than a teleprompter and a decade-old reputation. Otherwise, you'll end up exactly where Jimmy did, at the bottom of a comedic dog pile, wondering when the applause stopped and why the laughter sounds more like mockery. So, as the world moved on, Gutfeld cracked open another beer and scribbled a few zingers for his next show. Tucker leaned back, uncrossed his legs, and smirked at the smoke still rising from Kimmel's fading credibility. And Jimmy? He stared into the camera, delivered another joke that wasn't funny, and waited again for applause that never came. Not because he wasn't trying, but because he was already finished. He just hadn't realized it yet.